What is good people? You are now listening to another episode of At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and today we have an extremely special guest. If you're watching it on the YouTube format, you know this man he's the epitome of style. So I had to at least, not half step and, match the energy, so to speak. He's Baltimore born and raised. He's a graduate of University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He runs a fashion website entitled websterstyle.com and is also the host of the Sartorial and Geek Podcast, where you'll find such topics as fashion, fragrance, anime, video games, the whole nine. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Elden Hawkes in the building. Elden, what's happening, man?
I'm good, Danny. How about yourself, man? Thanks for having me on.
Man, pleasure's all mine. So we'll get right into the Sartorial and Geek Podcast. How did that come about?
Well, many years ago, I used to do the Webster Style podcast, and I ran it through I think Podomatic, and I stopped in 2014 due to some life changes. I'll put it that way if I go into too many details, where I just stopped a lot of things. But I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years. I wasn't really consistent, but it wasn't too dissimilar to the format from Sartorial and Geek. It was a lot of geeky stuff, not so much into the fragrance. I really hadn't discovered fragrances by that point in time. It was more style, more tech. When I did go to conventions, I did get interviews there, but nothing as formal as what I'm doing now. So when I had those changes in my life, I'd stopped a lot of stuff. I really was in and out of Webster Style. I wasn't really doing much with the website. The podcast just stopped. And I came back around to podcasting maybe right before the pandemic. So late 2019, I think it is when I started up again. And it took me a while to find my footing. The title really came from, I used to contribute to a website called Pop Culture Uncovered. It was the next issue before then. And I used to do their podcast as well when it was the next issue. And I used to do something called Sartorial Geek, or the Sartorial Geek. Well, the Sartorial Geek is kind of already taken. So when I started my own, I just changed it to the Sartorial and Geek by Webster Style podcast. So that like the whole name, that way nobody can get anything confused. And I would say I started that sporadically. I didn't start really grinding weekly until the pandemic. Because I think for those first 6 months or so I was doing it, I do an episode here, episode there, so trying to work out my format. But committing to it and doing it weekly, it really allowed me to find my footing. It really allowed me to find a format that worked for me and my schedule. So that's why I really I'm always talking about, I'm in the game. I'm not a humongous gamer, but you would never think that if you see my presence online. So gaming, comics, things I'm watching, always got to talk about fragrance. Whenever a style tip or something comes up that I really want to talk about, I do that as well. For the most part, when it's just me as a podcast listener, I don't mind listening to hour and a half podcast, but sometimes, especially like a ride to work or something, you got a half hour. So for the most part, when I don't do anything special, I'm in and out and within about 25 minutes to a half hour. And I always found that was a sweet spot for me as far as to do it. And then since I have a formula, I can just go back into my outlines and plug in the different things I want to talk about. And it was a lot easier just to get in, do the recording, do the editing, churn them out, and then post them and get them ready. The hardest part is when I'm being more current with some of the maybe events I'm talking about or television I'm watching as well. That's when it's sometimes like you get delays because life happens.
Yeah,
there'll be many times I'm sitting in here and it's like 3 a.m. It's like I'll go to sleep, wake up, it's like I need to get a podcast out. Let me go knock this out real quick and just sit down here to set up my little mini office in the guest room and just knock it out real quick, edit it, and then I walk in the morning. So then I'll go and do my outline or do all my show notes. And while I'm drinking a cup of coffee at Starbucks during the middle of my walk, load everything, and come back home and get ready for work. And here I am.
Man, I like that method, man. That's awesome. So if y'all make sure y'all download, like, and subscribe to the Sartorial and Geek Podcast, especially the YouTube page, because this man has some illustrious guests, man. I mean, he's had Anna Fox on. He's had Avery Jane on, man. Dude, I bow to you. Seriously.
Look, that's connections. That is all about connections and meeting people. Let me tell you how those connects happen. So I do the over Nerds Rule the World. I do the video game show, The Checkpoint, as well as the wrestling show, Kayfabe Baby. Well, my man Kuya P, who runs that, I've known him for 10 years. We met through comics and stuff, through mutual friends. Okay. So I've tagged along with him to conventions and whatnot. So he had to connect, and he put me down. So when I went to Exotica last year, I met Carmella, I met Avery. Really, it's weird to say hit it off with Carmella, but like, she's cool peoples. But they have a PR person, and the PR person is so cool. She's so accommodating. She's like, who you want to talk to? And she's like, just let me know. I'll set it up for you. And she's very good at what she does for her clients, and she's very good as far as working with press and being accommodating, especially when they give press gives her clients good press. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And she puts a good light on her clients as well. So yeah, so that's, again, networking, connections, and just reaching out to people.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So your fashion sense, how did you cultivate that?
Oh, that's been a long time, man. I tell people, I don't own a pair of jeans. I haven't owned a pair of jeans since college, and even then I didn't wear them like that.
Okay.
I've always been, and this is more because of my mom and how she dressed me, I've always been a khakis and button up sort of person. Not say I didn't wear jeans, but as I grew older, those sort of things just phased out of my wardrobe. I honestly think my fashion sense didn't really start to, I wouldn't say fashion, my style, and really coming to who I am as far as how I want to present myself. Because I've always been a shirt and tie sort of guy, but really understanding the nuances of things, that didn't start until my 30s.
Okay.
Really just figuring things out, what works for me and my body type, what, say, colors work well on me, even daring to experiment with different things and different looks. Like the whole bow tie was an experiment. Like literally, I had a good friend of mine. We worked together for a couple of years, and he always wore bow ties. And this is pre 2009, and he was like, like, you should do it. Like, it really good on you, really good on you. So ended up leaving that job, and a couple years later, I was just in the mall, and I'm like, let me buy one, like, just randomly, let me buy it and try it. And I went on YouTube, and I started tying it with a tutorial on my leg. And at that time, I would a lot of the bow ties have the adjustable straps in the back. Even if you hand tie it, I would just slip it over my head and tighten it, because that muscle memory is totally different from tying a regular tie.
Yeah.
But eventually, like after a week or two, I just got the hang of it, and it's become my signature ever since.
Nice, man. And I love the fact that you have a tendency to, well, for lack of a better term, you put paint where it ain't. It's like whatever everybody's doing, it's like you just go in the opposite direction, and you find your own style, and it's like you make it your own unique aesthetic. And I always dug that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's really the biggest part. And this is, and I'm sure you'll understand this. So Webster style, the whole thing really came from, and this is 2009. So the landscape of visual media has drastically changed, especially with social media and internet. But back then it was like, we just started getting Twitter, Instagram wasn't a thing. You know, the depictions of us were still very much in print. And most of those depictions really skewed toward, you had what, King, Double XL, all those magazines back then. That was the only place that you saw guys that look like us. You look in details, Esquire, GQ back then, you didn't see too many people looking like us. And that's a lot of where Webster style came from, because I had an issue with how, not just how we were depicted, but the depictions of us didn't represent me. It didn't represent my friends. The guys I went to Cal's with, even to some degree, didn't represent the guys that I grew up with, because they weren't in that mentality. They weren't in that, like, that street style, that street image, that urban image. And I always hate how that word is used to classify us.
Yeah.
That's not who we were. And we never saw ourselves in any other medium back then. So that's where it really started. Now is drastically different with social media and whatnot. But that's really where all of this started.
And you are a definite trendsetter in that regard. And
Thank you.
Once again, kudos to you. So the fragrance game, how did that come about?
Oh, this was, I want to say 2017. So not that long ago, but long enough. I had gotten a fragrance box, and I forget if one of those subscription boxes like Sprezza box or Gentleman Club. I forget which one it was, because I had subscriptions to, I gotten boxes from both of them at one point in time. But I had received this 10 ml sample of Oxford Blue by English Laundry. Now, I was never big into fragrance. I've had some, like my wife has bought me Curb before one Christmas, and my mom's so Mary Kay, so I had Mary Kay cologne when I was in high school. But I was never a fragrance guy. Never cared. I used it. The ones I had, I used it all up. I didn't conserve. I didn't switch out. None of that stuff. 2017, getting English Laundry and smelling that, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And then not only that, the reactions, and you know what reactions I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, okay, this is different. But I really loved it. And that got me to start buying others from English Laundry. And at the time, a lot of those English Laundry fragrances ended up finding their way to like TJ Maxx and Target. So I was getting for like $12 a pop, $20 a pop. And that's really what started me. And then I started watching cats on YouTube, and some of y'all might get triggered, but Kevin Samuels, he did fragrances and style before he moved over to a lot of his conversations that he had toward the end before he passed away. God rest his soul. Mr. Siage, who also has passed away too since then. But Cubano, who else? Red Essence, Bowtie Fringers guys. So I ended up watching a lot of those guys back in the day to really learn more about fragrances in general, but also just learn about fragrances, like different types of fragrances. I knew nothing about notes, and I'm still learning today. But it's one of those things where it's a journey where it's so exciting to smell something new, regardless if I like it or not, and also just the chemistry behind it. And sometimes fragrances just don't work right the first time. You let them sit on the shelf like 6 months, you come back and just they sit there and macerate, and the chemicals just kind of just like mix together better in the environment, and it smells totally different on your skin. I love that sense of discovery every time I put a fragrance on, even if I want a fragrance 100 times. Now it's always new, because, like, for instance, Zahara Signature Pro Home. I actually love that fragrance. It's one of my favorite fragrances, top 5 that I own. It is so versatile. As beautiful as it is, when I spray it, even now, years later, after the first time I sprayed it, it's still different. I'm still getting different notes of it every time I spray, whether it's just the straight lavender, frankincense, a little bit of the oud. It's always a little different every time I spray it now, because of just the juices aging, weather's different, my soap is different. It's just a wonderful experience. And if I'm going to be addicted to something, since this is this is a grown man show, but when you're going that grown man, there are things I'm addicted to, just not that we can talk about here, but being addicted to fragrances, and you know what I'm talking about. Addicted to fragrances
Picking up what you're
is
putting down.
definitely right. Is definitely a hobby. I think that it's one that I enjoy. It's one that has also allowed me to network and meet other people as well. So it's been really fun.
Dope, dope. And I love the way that you broke down the fragrances because for me, I'm like a surface level smeller. Like it smell either smells good or it doesn't. But
Mhm.
you, it's like it goes through
Right.
this whole bunch of series of filters. It's like you smell this, you smell that, and never me not taking into consideration all these outside factors that may enhance the smell. I was like,
Right.
man, I'm just sitting here taking notes. So I was like, man, you know what? I'm like when I start smelling stuff, I'm see if I can start looking for different things in the
Yeah.
fragrances.
Yeah, that's part of the learning process. Like I couldn't have done it either, but a lot of it is smelling different fragrances, then reading up and learning what things smell like, what notes are in fragrances. And then if I know this note is really prominent, then I can pick it out in another fragrance. And also I always say fragrances are very intimate in that a fragrance may smell great on me, but not on you, simply because our body chemistry is different. The sort of oils and stuff we're putting out is different, different soaps we're using, moisturizers we're using. I've had many a times where I'm trying to think of, okay, one I have is the um David Beckham Instinct. Very light fragrance, a lot of vetiver. Again, it's not something that lasts long, but it's very light, very gentlemanly. Couple people have commented, "It smells like piss." Okay.
Huh. Okay.
That's their impression. That's what they get from it. And I understand that. It doesn't change what I experience with that fragrance. And it doesn't change what they experience either. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, you're wrong. It smells great. Like, okay, that's what it smells like on you. And this is also one thing I would say. And this is sort of a recommendation to anybody. If you're getting into fragrances or want to test out a fragrance, try to get a sample. Because let me tell you, spraying it on a piece of paper compared to spraying it on the back of your hand, compared to spraying it on your wrist, you get three different smells.
Mm-hmm.
Because the paper smell, you'll really get a lot of times the top notes. The back of your wrist with that, especially with how thin the skin is and those sort of pulse point, you get a little bit more of the breakdown, but not a whole lot. You spray it on your palm or some of those pulse points, you get that heat irradiating. You start to really get a better sense of the robustness or lack of robustness of a fragrance. That's why I always tell people like just get a sample if you can, because just spraying it on a piece of paper in the store is not going to tell you whether it's good or not or whether it's going to smell good on you.
There you go. That's a comprehensive fragrance guide right there, and I greatly appreciate that. So now we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes. What is some of your earliest baseball memories, especially growing up
Oh
in
man,
Baltimore?
I have too many. I have too many. But I guess the one that I mean, that really too many is sticking in my head. But the one that was every day, and I mean every day, is my great grandfather listening to the O's game every single day. That was playing in our house. Either he'd stay in the dining room and he'd be listening to the game, and John Miller's announcing, and my little sister and I are watching TV, or he'd go into the living room and take the radio there and sit in the living room. But during baseball season, the O's game was always on. It was the O's game in the living room or the dining room, and gospel music playing in the kitchen. um, every day during baseball season, like we heard it, and that was omnipresent in my great grandparents' home. So um, the O's, and it's weird. I always tell people I am of that generation that grew up without a football team. I think the Colts left when I was like 6. So I literally grew up from 6 to what the Ravens came in, what, 96? So 6 to 18 or whenever it was. Basically the whole time I lived in Baltimore, for the most part, we had no football team. So while I love the Ravens and I'm a Ravens fan, I'm not the biggest football fan because, well, we didn't have a football team. We didn't have somebody to cheer on like that. The O's were family. And that was something that was so intertwined in everything that we did. My great grandfather listening. My mom was a letter carrier for most of the time during my adolescence, so they always had baseball nights. So we get on the bus and leave from the post office and go to the baseball games. My dad and his family, they lived blocks from Memorial Stadium. So we used to walk from my grandmother's house and go to Memorial Stadium all the time before they opened up Camden Yards. And it was so cool. My dad was always, and still is, just loves kids. He just pick up random kids from the neighborhood and they come with us to
Wow.
the game. And then my best friend and I, well, my oldest friend from elementary school, we bonded over baseball and baseball cards. And we like became like brothers. We still are. He's my best man at my wedding. We became like brothers, families intertwined over baseball. And so the O's and Orioles baseball has been so intrinsic to my life story of my family and how we've connected.
Man, that is awesome. That so many generations of your family were so attached to the Orioles like that. Man, that is awesome to hear, man. So, who were some of your favorite Orioles players?
Since I grew up in the 80s, you got to start with Cal. You
Yeah.
got to start with Cal Ripken. That whole squad, Eddie, I think we moved to the 90s, Mike Devereaux, even when Harold Reigns was there for a minute. It's now it's a little fuzzy. My man and I, my best friend, I was telling you about, we went to a Nats game 2 months ago. Nats versus the O's, of course.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of central to where we are. And we beat them. We were just talking about, yeah, we probably couldn't name anybody on the team right now as much as we follow them. So, because we used to be knee deep in knowing everybody. Now you're talking about wives, kids, work. It's like,
Yeah.
we ain't like we were in middle school.
Right.
But yeah, those players just really epitomize what baseball was. It's funny, I don't own a VHS player anymore, but I still have, and it was Christmas of 1989. I got my first VHS player. And at Christmas 1989, if you got a VHS player and you were like us, you got one movie, and that was Batman.
Yep.
You got Batman on
I did
VHS.
too.
So in this case, this Christmas I got Batman. I got Trading Places. Now, I don't know why my mom thought an R-rated movie was a good idea for me, especially with Jamie Curtis being butterball naked. I'm not mad at her for it, but it was like, thinking back, that was kind of a weird choice. But then I also got Why Not? The story of the O's 1989 season, when it went from worst under Cal Ripken Sr. in 88. Frank Robinson came in and went all the way to first place, only to lose lose it at the last game of the year to the Blue Jays.
I forgot Frank Robinson was y'all's manager at one point.
Yeah, he was manager for a while.
Man, yeah. That completely slid by me. But man, that's awesome. So what are some of your other favorite Orioles moments?
It's not necessarily an Oreo moment. It's a Camden Yards moment. So I sang in a gospel choir for a time when I was at UMES.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually got to sing on the field.
Oh, really?
Like, that was just so real. I am geeking. I'm like, I am on the field at Oriole Park in Camden Yards. Like, I'm just geeking out. Some of my friends who weren't from the Baltimore, from DMV in general, it's like, I'm like, this is fucking Camden Yards.
Yeah.
Like, you don't understand. Like, I'm on the field. Like, that is, like, I have great memories from college, but that is one that always sticks out because I got to be on the field, and it was just so cool.
Man, that's still a bucket list venue that I've yet to attend, but I'm going to make that happen because I hear nothing but good.
Park.
I heard nothing but great things about Camden Yards.
Let me tell you, I went to, this is 2012, so it was like 10 years ago. Nats were pretty young. One of my old jobs, they used to do quarterly staff outings, so my boss paid for everybody to go. We went to Maryland Science Center, and the cool stuff is like a family, like, sort of work bonding thing. So it was one time we went to the Nats game. So it was this was literally my first time at a ballpark outside of Camden Yards Memorial Stadium ever. And I walked in, I said, I felt like I'm cheating on my wife. It just felt weird to be in another ballpark, rooting for another team. I was like, oh, this is not cool at all.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like you gotta wash that stench off from you whenever you get back home.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, no, this is not cool. I can't root for another team in that park. Ew. Like, and then at that time, I'm like, these ain't real. They the Expos.
So, are there any other non-Orioles players that you grew up watching that you admired?
Man, there's too many to count. You know, that whole class of those 80s, 90s greats, Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson, you know, Kerry Puckett, you know, even before, well, I can't really say McGuire lost it, but Sammy Sosa went off the deep end with his skin bleach and stuff.
Yeah.
Sammy and Mark McGuire, that home run race, even Barry Bonds, who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care.
Agreed.
uh Ozzie Smith. They just like, I'm not saying there aren't a whole lot of greats now, but like that like 85 to 95 period, there were just so many Hall of Fame players on the field at that point in time. It was really ridiculous when I think back about it. Even stretching in 2000, but really 85. I mean, I saw Nolan Ryan pitch one time. Like that's just, you know, crazy that I actually got to see that in person.
Yeah.
You know, Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, like all these great pitchers on that time period. It's just, it was something. And again, look, I'm an old guy, ladies and gentlemen, and I know us old men get nostalgic, but I'm really looking at the landscape today. And baseball is amazing. Baseball is great. And there's so many all-star players, but that time period, when you look back and hear all those names, and you think that all those players overlapped when they played, is absolutely amazing. You even think Barry Bonds started out during that time period.
Yeah.
You know, it's really insane to think we had all these great players that really played around the same 10 to 15 years in baseball. And baseball is one of those sports where people last, you know, forever. It's not like a football or even a basketball. You know, you're talking about a lot of players stay 5, 6, 7 years bouncing around teams. That's even being mediocre. You know, the stars can stay around 10, 15, depending on how well they keep themselves in shape.
That's
Like
true.
how long did like Cal was what? Cal was played for like 15 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's ridiculous that longevity in baseball is not the same in other sports. So you had a lot of that overlap there. It was growing up in baseball and loving baseball. It was a wonderful time to have that.
Yeah, and that's a good point you made that I'd never really considered about all of those players overlapping. And pretty much all of those players that you name are in the Hall of Fame, which is even
Right.
more mind-blowing. So now we're going to get into the 5-question segment. So
All right.
first and last question are the same question I ask every guest on here, and questions 2 through 4 are 100% random. So question number 1, what were the ideal items on Eldon's school lunch tray?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna go with high school. So high
Okay.
school, stromboli.
Really?
Yeah, I went to Mount St. Joe in Baltimore for high school, and that was, even now, that's still a thing. Even though they got outside people, they don't have the little old ladies making lunch anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Stromboli still on Thursday. That's like a thing. Strombolis. That was my first time I was introduced to stromboli, and that was those ladies. Like when that was the first time, because going to Baltimore City Public School, everything was prepared for the most part. Middle school, I think they had some stuff back there that they actually cooked, but going to St. Joe, like those ladies, like we had a bunch of ladies, old ladies, some of like where them were students' moms who actually worked there, who
Wow.
cooked everything back there. And that was just some of the best school lunch. But stromboli, I don't know, it's like they put something in it. It's like they put crack in it. It was so good and so filling, especially you're a high school boy, you gotta get through the day because you're always hungry. Hell,
Mhm.
I'm 44 and I'm always hungry now, so that don't really change.
Question number 2. This is courtesy of friend of the podcast, Gerard Droz from the Board Meeting Podcast. He
Okay.
asks, since you're into fashion, do you have a favorite Orioles uniform?
No, I never thought about that. I like the new ones they brought out to say Baltimore. Those are pretty fly. And the campaign behind it was just very inspirational, very touching. Uh, I gotta say, so those classic 80s uniforms with the big Oriole bird on it.
Yeah.
I love the cartoonishness of it. And I just love the way like the teams of the era played wearing those.
Oh, so question number 3. If you were a baseball player, what would your walk-up music be?
Hmm. It would have to be DMX. No, probably where my dog's at.
That can't go wrong with DMX.
Nah.
Question number 4. What store would you consider to be overlooked when it comes to fragrance selection?
All of rack stores are all they always talk about those. Where would be that's hard. Because I'm trying to think. 'Cause I do a lot of stuff online now, especially because a lot of what I'm trying to get now are indie brands, not so much designer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But physical stores, I would have to go with, even though everybody goes to Burlington, Burlington Coat Factory, depending on how old you are. I would say, because this is what I've seen lately, at least around in my area, both TJ Maxx and Marshalls, and even Ross. Well, TJ Maxx and Marshalls, their fragrance supply just kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes they have some stuff, sometimes they don't. And when they do, especially Marshalls, there's a lot of same crap. And I say crap because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Ross is, they have a lot of the same things. I don't see much differentiation there. Burlington is the place where you got to hunt for it, though. Burlington's a place where I found some of my best deals in out of the way fragrances. Like for instance, and I remember the is Citron Vetiver by the Art of Shaving, just a little 10 ml bottle. I had to hunt for that. That was like behind 3, 4 others, and like 3, 4 bottles of Curve, and that was a nice little $10 pickup. It was like a $50 bottle of fragrance right there. Just I think that I've had my best treasure hunting for sort of out there things at Burlington.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind. And question number 5. What was the last thing that really made you laugh?
Oh, I saw The Blackening. That was pretty funny. I enjoyed that a lot. It wasn't like gut busting laugh, but
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of cultural things and a lot of references and nuances that you had to laugh if you understood. I'll put it that way.
Got you. I will definitely check The Blackening out. So if you have anything you want to plug or promote, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, website.com. Usually, if it's on YouTube or the podcast, it'll end up there eventually. So if you don't subscribe to any of those, which you should, everything will end up there. You can find me on YouTube, Webster Style Magazine, host of fragrance content, interviews. My latest interview that just dropped, I think, was last week, Avery Jane and Pink Fox. So both of those were there. I'm lining up some interviews with some independent fragrance creators here in this area who I've been talking to, as well as got BlurCon coming up. So you'll see some content from that in the next couple weeks. And of course, the Sartorial and Geek Podcast with Web Style, number 51, 151 just dropped at this recording yesterday. So I'm talking about Sartre Troopers Extermination. We got the audio interview of my interview with Navia, Trekkie like myself, who I found on Instagram, TikTok. So we talked about Star Trek. If you don't want to listen to the audio, the video is already on Instagram. Well, possibly Instagram, but YouTube as well as webstyle.com. Talking about the good man from the fragrance bar. So I gave a little bit more in depth compared to my interview that is on that interview review that is on YouTube, but that's there as well. And talking about the first 2 episodes of season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds as well. So that's all currently with episode 151, with 152 will be out next week, as well as got a lot of fragrances to talk about and review over the next couple days. So, and also depending on when this comes out, if you go on Instagram between now and July the 2nd, I'm holding my second of 3, maybe 4, because somebody said they was going to donate stuff for me. Giveaways to celebrate 150 episodes. So right now we are giving away a chance at winning a 10 ml cigar clutch of Sensanto and Sage from my Savoir Faire. I love the fragrance. One of my TikTok followers donated a bunch of fragrances to me to try out, and that was one of them. Since I already own it, I'm donating that one as well to a giveaway. So enter today on Instagram. We already had somebody win a 6 ml bottle of Zaharoff Signature Rosé last week, which I still have to put in the mail, but they're actually a local, so I'm not really worried about it too much. Taking a long time to get there to them. So yeah, just when in doubt, go to webstyle.com and you will find everything else from there.
Nice. Elden, thank you so much for being the guest. I had an awesome time chatting it up with you about.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So make sure you download, like, and subscribe to Sartorial and Geek Podcast. Make sure you do the same thing for At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. And for Elden and myself, till next time, y'all be good. 3 strikes.